So we didn't set out to say, let's find some other people, some other fun people to have dinner with. It was very organic. And I think that's another thing that again goes back to the flexibility piece is sometimes it's a little scary to let the organic happen. But to your point, it can create the thing or allow the thing to happen that you didn't think was the thing that is now even better than the thing you thought was going to happen. What's the one premier event that brings the global attractions industry together? IAAPA Expo 2026, happening in Orlando, Florida, November 16th through the 20th.
It's where more than 40,000 professionals come to share the wonder, explore over 1,000 innovative exhibitors, and discover future-focused solutions.
From education to networking to ideas that drive real business impact, IAAPA Expo is where what's next takes shape.
Register now and save up to 30% at iapa.org/IAAPA Expo. That's IAAPA.org/IAAPA EXPO. Welcome to the Attraction Pros Podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros Podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing great. How are you?
I am fan-CNC-tastic.
Whoa, threw in some consonants.
I did.
What's
Yes.
what's CNC?
CNC, for those who might not be familiar, is CoasterNerdCon, which happens every year, June-ish, July-ish, and it's where I get to together with two of my friends, it's three total, and we pick a part of the country or the world, and we pick a bunch of parks. We go to those parks and get to experience roller coasters and attractions, and then there's always some lessons, always some takeaways from that trip that I enjoy talking to you about. So that's what we get to do today.
Yeah, I really get to benefit from CNC so much because I get all of the lessons without any of the travel fatigue. So I always look forward to this episode every year.
Awesome. Well, I will say there was a lot of driving this time around. We started in Philadelphia, went to Knoebels first, then went to Hershey, Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, Carowinds, had a little stop here in Hendersonville at my house because I'm equidistant between Carowinds and Dollywood. We went on to Dollywood, and then it was a pretty long drive from Dollywood to Holiday World, but worth it. Holiday World, then to Kings Island, and then finished up at Cedar Point. So I've got some observations, I've got some themes, I've got some random thoughts. I've also got a couple of misses that I will share, which, I mean, you know me, I'm usually pretty positive, and I will maybe categorize these as food for thought for the places that, and I won't mention the places, but well, one of them I will. But just food for thought, and maybe just another way to look at things, and looking at it from a guest perspective versus the operational perspective.
Well, I've also got to imagine too that you can't take a trip like that with all those parks and all of that going on with. And assuming that there's not going to be any friction along the way.
Yeah.
So I look forward to learning about those. I also find it entertaining that halfway through your road trip, you stopped at home as part of your road trip.
Yes.
You flew and then drove and then went home and then kept driving and then flew home.
That is true. That is true. And it's not the first time we've done this because we've done the Dollywood Carowinds trip a couple of times, and it just so happens that my house is right in the middle. So why not? Save a little money on hotels, get to see my wife, my dog, now my cat, get to spend a night in my own bed. Yeah.
Wait, did I know this?
That I have a cat now?
Yeah.
I thought I told you. Maybe not.
How long have you had a cat?
gosh, it's probably been 6 months or so now.
Really?
So here's the quick backstory. Is that my wife and some people from the neighborhood had been rounding up the stray cats in
Yeah.
the not the band, the actual stray cats,
Oh, okay.
um, in the neighborhood because they were populating the neighborhood with far too many stray cats, and we didn't want that to happen. So they gathered them up and took them into a clinic that would fix them so that they wouldn't populate anymore. So one of the cats, a black cat that my wife named Vader because he was mean and black, just never went away. He never left. We didn't feed him at first, but of course, then because he didn't go away, he just kind of hung around our property. We did start to feed him, and then gradually he became more and more amenable to living in a home environment. And we tried to place him. We tried to adopt him out. We were just going to foster him for a little while. And one day, my wife and I looked at each other and said, "We have a cat. Like, let's just call it what it is. We've got a cat. Let's embrace it." The whole 9 yards. So yes, so now I have a cat. And Vader actually goes on walks with Otis and I.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well, I
So
expect a cameo at some point with like Dr. Evil style of you with Vader, a cameo, if you will.
there you go. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. I love it.
Yeah.
So yes, I got to see the whole tribe coming back home.
Yeah.
Also, fun travel hack is that if you're coming home, you get to leave some stuff out of your suitcase. So your suitcase is only half as full as you're going on to the rest of the journey.
What do you mean?
So I stopped at home. I had dirty clothes from
Oh,
the first
because you stopped at home. Yeah, got it.
I
That makes
left the
sense.
dirty clothes
Yeah.
here, picked up some clean clothes, and then went on my way.
So the travel hack is no matter where you're going, come home halfway through your trip and drop off your dirty laundry.
If that is a possibility, yes, absolutely. We're not
Nice.
just talking about CNC, we're talking about positive travel hacks. So,
That's a good
yes,
one.
yes,
All
good
right.
stuff. Good stuff. So, are you ready to get into the lessons, the takeaways from CNC?
I am so excited.
Okay. I'm going to start with two themes
Okay.
that became evident throughout our journey. The first one is flexibility. And I may have mentioned this on a podcast. I may have said this quote to you before, but one of the things my dad said for a long time, and it was actually on his answering machine at one point, was you've got to remain flexible so you don't get bent out of shape. And I thought that was a great line, like to think about, like as you go places, as you have expectations, as you are thinking this is going to happen. And if that doesn't happen, it's very easy for us to get bent out of shape, which is something you talk a lot about in guest recovery, right? Something didn't go well. They expected it to go a certain way. Now they're bent out of shape. Well, this trip declared very early that we were going to need to be flexible. So our first stop was at Knoebels, and great park, love the park, love Phoenix, as I've probably mentioned in the past. It was running super well. The stand-up airtime in the front seat was unbelievable. Like, and I'm not a small human, right? So for it to throw me out of the seat and literally I'm almost in the standing up position, not only was super, super fun, but it was a little unbelievable. But anyway, so of course we wanted to ride it as many times as we could. But because of the attendance of the park that day, they were only running one train. So if we wanted to wait for the front seat, that meant that we were going to have to wait longer and get in fewer rides. And as we've talked about in the past, you know, we've prided ourselves on getting 17 rides on Phoenix and 20 rides on Fury and 10 rides on Steel Vengeance, and we recognized right away that that was not going to happen. Like, we're not going to set any records this trip when it comes to the number of coaster rides that we're experiencing. But it was okay because we loved the coaster, loved the rides. At almost every one of the other places that we went to, there was some sort of flexibility exercise that we went through. So at Hershey Park, weather impacted our visit. So again, we didn't get as many rides on Wildcats Revenge or Candemonium or Sky Rush as we would have liked. But again, we learned that lesson. We started off flexible at Knoebels, and that carried on into Hershey Park. A different kind of flexibility was required at Busch Gardens because a friend of mine had set up a behind the scenes experience for us. Didn't know exactly what that was going to be until we got there. So we didn't know how long it was going to be. We didn't know, how that was going to impact the rest of our day to ride our favorite rides and that kind of thing. It ended up being an amazing experience. So we were very thankful for it. We got to see the maintenance bays of Griffin and Loch Ness Monster and Alpengeist, Dark Coaster. And then, of course, as we were part of this kind of quote unquote coaster tour, it was just the three of us and two tour guides. They put us on the ride. We got to ride twice if we wanted to. So it was a super wonderful experience that we would not have had otherwise, but we had to be flexible because we didn't know what it was going to be like. So as we were driving in from Hershey that day, we're like, we better have lunch first because we don't know what's going to happen. So we had a quick lunch before we got to the park, and then needed some flexibility as we were going. The next one was the heartbreaker. So I got a text, and I'm thankful that I got a text from my friend Sandy Cranford, who works at Carowinds, because she told me the day before that Fury was not going to be open. And that was are you kidding me? I dropped my phone on the floor of the car. Like, what are you talking about? That's when it had the foundation issue. Luckily, it's reopened now. However, that was part of our flexibility because that was one of the rides that we love to binge. We love that ride. So, and I'm glad that she told me ahead of time because that allows us to adjust our expectations. So when we got there, we weren't like, oh, it's closed, right? The moose out front should have told us. So that actually helped us a lot by knowing that up ahead of time. So we adjusted our expectations and still enjoyed our day at Carowinds. But obviously didn't get to ride Fury. At Dollywood, the new ride, Night Flight, was not ready yet. So that was something we were looking forward to, but we had known in advance that that wasn't quite ready. So again, an adjustment, flexibility. So we got to do some of our other favorites a little bit more than, experiencing that one. Also had a little bit of rain, a little bit of weather at Dollywood, but not too bad. Holiday World and Kings Island didn't have any flexibility issues there. Cedar Point, we get there, and we had a day and a half. So the first day, I had some friends driving in from Cleveland that I'd grown up with. Three of my really good friends from high school that decided to drive into Sandusky, and we had dinner that night. So that was a little bit of a flexibility thing. Like, I'm leaving the group. Alan and Darren are going to continue riding, so that's not typically how we do this. But it was so good to see those folks from high school. So that was absolutely well worth it. But then the next day, in terms of flexibility, that's when a lot of those wildfires, the smoke was billowing over Lake Erie into Cedar Point. I remember I took a picture that morning of just a haze over Cedar Point from our Breakers hotel room. I didn't really notice it, like in terms of like breathing quality, but a lot of people did. And in fact, Alan at one point had a bit of a coughing fit because of the air quality. They ended up closing the park at 7:00, which we were on our way to dinner at 6 when we heard the announcement, and like we were going to go to the Grand Pavilion, have a nice dinner, and then ride out TT2 and Steel Vengeance for the rest of the night. So we had to change our plans. We had to be flexible. So instead of going to dinner, and I was pretty hungry. I was like, I need some protein. I need to go eat. But as soon as we heard that, we're like, plans are changing. Adrenaline kicks in. We run back. We had just finished a ride on TT2. We run back to Steel Vengeance to get a couple of rides on that before the park closed. And then we went off to a different dinner. But through all that, I really feel that being flexible was a theme that allowed us to still enjoy our experiences, we had a great time, really enjoy our experiences, make some great connections, which that's going to be another theme is connections. But because we allowed ourselves to be flexible and, adjust our expectations sort of on the fly. And two big takeaways from that, I think, first of all, from a guest perspective, like, again, you talk a lot about, guest recovery and when their expectations are super high and they're not met, sometimes that, impacts their emotions, certainly. But I think also from a leadership perspective, like we need to be flexible with our teams. We need to be flexible with the environments that are presented to us. We need to be able to adapt, which I know is easier for some personality styles than others, which is totally understandable. But I think that's what allows you to refocus your energy on what you can do versus what you can't do. And I think that's really, again, what allowed us to make this trip so enjoyable, even though it wasn't what we expected at the beginning. Another quick takeaway from that is that I recognized early on that I was I was a little consumed with counting coasters. Like I wanted to come back and say we rode 150 coasters and we had this many rides on that. And I recognized that the numbers don't tell the whole story, as we've talked about before when it comes to looking at data. So when I was looking at counting coasters, I wasn't taking into consideration all those other connections that we make throughout the day or the other things that we might do and how that can have a positive impact on the experience. So yes, it would be great to be able to ride Phoenix a couple hundred more times during the trip, but that didn't completely ruin our vacation. And thinking about from a business standpoint, if we're focusing only on the numbers, if we're focusing only on the number of coaster rides or the number of XYZ, and we're not taking into consideration that more emotional experience and the connections, sometimes we're not getting the whole picture. So I know I just threw a lot at you at the first one. I'd love to hear any questions or thoughts you have before we move on to the next thing.
So for flexibility, I wrote this down because I was trying to consolidate all of those into kind of the overarching takeaway is the interpretation of flexibility here, that is probably the same in many other capacities, is probably accepting things that are beyond your control. And then you also said refocusing your energy to what you do have control over. Would you say that that was what you needed to do? You needed to accept things that were beyond your control, whether they're running one train on Phoenix or weather was bad here, air quality was bad here, Fury's not running, kind of XYZ of saying, I can be upset about that, or I could accept the fact that I cannot change that. And then therefore, like you said, you still had a great time. Someone else might come and say, this was a terrible trip, and let me list off all the things that you just mentioned right here. But being able to say, that I can't accept, or not I can't accept that. I can't control that. I have to accept that that's out of my control. And therefore it's up to me to make sure that I'm going to still have a positive experience for myself, for my friends that I'm with, and then refocusing that towards kind of the leadership mindset that you mentioned of saying, okay, sometimes a leader thinks that maybe they do want to be able to control everything, but that's maybe not the most effective leadership strategy. Flexibility as it relates to leadership is recognizing that you're going to be throwing curveballs pretty regularly, and you could say my team is terrible, my leaders that I'm looking up to are terrible, my coworkers are terrible, or we're all in this circumstance, let's refocus our energy to what we actually have the ability to manage.
I would absolutely say that's 100% true. And I think if I kind of reflect back on some of the leaders I've worked with in the past, the ones that were the most successful were the ones that were able to identify those things that they can't control and not necessarily not worry about them, but like refocus their energy on what they can control. And the ones who are, I would say, less successful or maybe more marginally successful are the ones who are repeatedly trying to control things that they can't control. And I'm reminded of a Star Wars quote. And yes, Vader is, named after Star Wars too. I think it's Princess Leia says when, the more you tighten your grip, the more things slip through your fingers. And so I think as leaders are trying to control every little thing, it becomes harder and harder to actually have the positive influence on those things as well. I will also take that into the arena of something you and I do, which is speaking. Right? Public speaking. To be able to say, I'm going to throw a question out to the audience and have no idea what's going to come back can be a very daunting task to do, right? But it's that uncertainty, it's the allowing them to have autonomy in the experience that creates a better experience for everybody. So you and I can't control everything that happens in that session. We can influence it, right? And we can push it in a certain direction, but we also have to have flexibility of what the audience is going through, what they're looking for, what their expectations are, and how they're reacting to the things that we are presenting.
Yeah, totally. Love it.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, what's next?
All right, let's talk about connections
All right.
because
I've already
along the
written it
way,
down.
along the way, we all also made some great connections with people, and one of the connections we made was because of our ability to be flexible. So, first of all, at Knoebels, made some great connections with the Knoebel family. We get to see Leanna, we get to see Brian, we got to see Stacy, we got to see a number of their team members. I also want to acknowledge publicly how saddened the entire industry is at the passing of Dick Knoebel. We found that out on our trip that he had passed away. I had seen Brian just a couple of days before that. Huge impact to the industry, not only Dick but his entire family. So I want to just acknowledge that here on the podcast publicly. But had a great time speaking with Brian. We went out to dinner with him and Stacy Knoebel. So lots of great connections there. Were had. Part of that was because we actually left the park a little early to go to dinner with them. Right. So again, flexibility. We would love to stay at the park until the very, very end, right? Until they kick us out. But we didn't do that so that we could have this great connection with Brian. At Hershey Park, we got to see Scott Siller, who's the director of operations. Got to see him for a little bit. Missed out, this is where the flexibility also comes in, missed out on seeing some of our friends there, Steve and Laura from Hershey Park. Didn't get to see them, just different circumstances didn't allow that to happen. So again, our flexibility with that. Carowinds, we did get to see Bridget, new park president at Carowinds. Also got to meet a new guy who joined us for lunch, Michael Parsons, an operations manager there. Geeked out on rides and all kinds of things, and we pressed him as hard as we could about Fury, but he wasn't budging, so good for him. But it was great to make a new connection because we had not met him before that. At Dollywood, we got to interact with Eugene, the resort president, and didn't get to see Pete Owens, but again, circumstances just didn't line up. So again, our flexibility came into present there. Matt at Holiday World, got to have dinner with Matt Eckert at Holiday World. Kings Island, we got to see Tony, the new park president there at Kings Island. And at Cedar Point, we didn't get to see any of the team members. Kara is one of my contacts there, and didn't get to see her again just because of scheduling. However, this led to one of the highlights, I think, of the trip: the closing early of Cedar Point. Because again, our flexibility was that, okay, we're not going to have dinner in the park. We recognize that the park is closing soon, so we're not going to waste time eating. Just like you and I, right, when we were at Great America. We're not going to waste our time eating there. We're going to get more rides on Steel Vengeance. So Alan says, oh, I'd love to have dinner at the Japanese steakhouse inside the Breakers. So we're like, all right. So we finish out our rides. We head back to the Breakers. And they didn't have a seat. And this was like 7:30. They didn't have a seating until like 9 o'clock. So we said, we'll take it. So we go change because we were all sweaty, right? And then there's a little bar in the Breakers, so we got a drink and we're just hanging out outside a little bit. Our time comes and we walk over to the entrance of the steakhouse. Well, there was two people there that just happened to be kind of hanging around, heard us talking about our day, and just kind of joined into the conversation. A woman named Kelly and her brother Kevin, who are from Pittsburgh, so they're huge Kennywood fans. So we started talking about our day at Cedar Point and Kennywood and all these different things, and just really hit it off, and we're just having a really great time. And another woman walks up. Her name is Rachel, and she starts talking about her day at the park and all the different things that she did. She's from Buffalo, so Darien Lake is her home park. But she's a huge coaster nerd. She said she's on a momcation because her husband doesn't necessarily do well on coasters, and her son isn't necessarily tall enough to ride a lot of them yet. So she decided, I'm going to go to Cedar Point by myself and just ride all the cool stuff. So we start talking. So you know how the Japanese steakhouse seating works. It's just, like 8 random people around the table. So they
Like a
call
random eight?
exactly like a random 8. So the hostess comes out and calls Kelly and Kevin's name. And they said, "Your table is ready." And they said, "No, no." And Kelly was super fun. She was also not afraid to share her thoughts and opinions about things. Pretty bold. She goes, "No, we want to sit with them." So she pointed to the three of us and she said, "We want to sit with them." So we're like, okay, this will be fun. So they rearrange whatever they have to rearrange and they take us all in and the 5 of us, sit at a table. And Kelly's like, "Where's Rachel?" Rachel had already been sat at another table. Kelly gets up. She goes over and says, "Rachel, you're coming to sit with us." So she brings Rachel over. We have the best time. Japanese steakhouses are fun anyway. Great food. But we just had a great time with these 3 new friends, these 3 connections that we never would have made had the park stayed open until 10. We would have been binging Steel Vengeance. We would have come back to the hotel. We would have had our dinner at Grand Pavilion, binge Steel Vengeance, come back to the hotel and crashed and gotten ready for our drive the next morning to Cleveland. But instead, we had this amazing experience. We called it the Wildfire Dinner Group because of the wildfires in Canada. But again, I go back to our flexibility led to this connection, the connection or the flexibility also to sit with these random strangers to have this amazing dinner experience. And honestly, it has nothing to do with a roller coaster, but in my mind, it was like one of the highlights of the trip because it was so focused on this organic connection that we made with people who we've never met before and we may never see again. So
Yeah.
again, lots of connections that were made through our interactions around the different parks. But this last one that was really set up by Cedar Point closing early and our ability to be flexible really had a positive impact on the trip.
It reminds me of one thing that I said last summer of sometimes the thing you think is the thing is not the thing, and sometimes the thing you think would never be the thing is actually the thing. That was the thing. I'm not going to give more context to that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to last summer's guest experience lessons from summer 2025.
Yes.
But I think that this was actually kind of the perfect follow-up to the flexibility theme, because if flexibility is accepting the things that are beyond your control, and then you refocus your energy, it's almost taking the I don't know, maybe it's like turning lemons into lemonade, whatever it might be, or really like taking a situation that on the surface level is negative and then being able to say, actually, I'm going to create an experience that's not only going to cancel out the negative, but create something that was even more powerful, even more positive than the positive would have been if the negative never happened, in a way.
Say that twice.
No.
It sounded like a tongue twister.
Yeah.
And I would say we didn't create it, we allowed it to happen. And I think those are
Manifest.
two very different
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we didn't set out to say, let's find some other people, some other fun people to have dinner with. It was very organic. And I think that's another thing that again goes back to the flexibility piece is sometimes it's a little scary to let the organic happen. But to your point, it can create the thing or allow the thing to happen that you didn't think was the thing that is now even better than the thing you thought was going to happen.
Yeah. So let me ask this: did the chef did they lean into this as well, or kind of recognize that you all just met and just kind of became friends? Was able to kind of pick up on it too, or they're just doing their job?
I think I mean, he was a great Japanese steakhouse chef.
Yeah.
He interacted with all of us. He had what he said was sake in the little squirt bottle, and we
Yeah.
all drank
Yeah.
out of it. But he made the fire and all the things. I don't know that he picked up or did anything different based on that, but I wasn't also paying attention to
Okay.
that. Like he treated us. So I will say, I felt like he treated us all as one big group of 6. There were 2 other people that were on the end of the table that were sat with us that never really joined our group,
Okay.
right? And we tried. We said hello. We tried introducing ourselves, things like that. They just didn't seem to want to join in the fun, so that was okay. But I think the chef did. I mean, like any good performer, he plays into the people that play with him.
Hmm.
So my friend Alan, he wanted me to video him, drinking the sake. So he's like, wait a minute, and the chef's like, come on, we got. But he played into it, like
Yeah.
he really made it a joke and part of the fun.
Nice. Okay. So
Yeah.
maybe one of the lessons here is like leave room for spontaneity because it can go in a number of different directions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it takes confidence to lean into that,
Hmm.
to know that it's going to be okay. Again, if we take it back to presenting, like you and I have an agenda, we have a syllabus, if you will, when we're doing a session, and we know that if we throw it out to the group, that it could go completely,
Yeah.
how could this go completely wrong? But we know where we're trying to get to, so we can bring it back. And I think having done that so many times and having the confidence that you can do that, you're almost like I can throw anything out, and I know I'm going to be able to bring it back.
Is there an improv lesson in this? A
I'm
little
sure
yin
there is.
and with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're the one that took the improv class, so you tell me.
I
Is
think
there a
stand-up class.
stand up? Well,
Yeah.
were there elements of improv in that?
So it was at Second City, which is known for its improv. And when we talked about crowd work, we did some improv exercises with it.
There
So,
you
but
go.
yeah, it wasn't like too deep into improv, but kind of like just rolling with it is kind of is where I see. And it's whether it's on stage or whether it's in life.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's a balance of knowing where you want to go and where you want to get to, and rolling with it to be able to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you understand what the end goal is, like from a leadership perspective, but recognize that you're dealing with human beings, so you have to be flexible on how you get there.
And it goes back to flexibility and
There
accepting
you
the things
go.
that are beyond your control and channeling the efforts towards those you can, but also embracing the things that you can't and leaning
Right,
into it. Yeah.
right, right. There's one other connection story that I forgot to mention as we were talking about it, and it happened at Hershey Park.
Mhm.
And I think there is a really good leadership lesson in this one. So we did get to binge Candemonium at the end of the night. So riding over and over and over again. And we had our
Love it.
fast track. So we were going in the fast track lane. And there was I want to get his name right, Ding Wei. That's what his name is, from Asia. Ding Wei was the team member there, and he had the height stick, and he was standing at the entrance, and he saw that we had the fast track wristband, so we went a certain way. And the first time we went by, he waved, right? Smile, wave, very nice. He saw that we knew where we were going. He didn't need to give us any direction. Smile and wave was great. I think the third time, and we did it like 4 or 5 times, like in rapid succession. I want to say it was the third time it graduated to a high five. So he initiated, like first he was waving, and then he was like, he put his hand out like this. I high fived him, and he was like, all right, right. So it's taking that connection to the next level, right? The next one was a high five also. I want to say it was 1 or 2 rides later where it was the last ride of the night, and of course all the staff, excuse me, they don't need a greeter anymore because the coaster's closed, so they all come up to the ride platform. Well, we got off one of the last trains, and he was at the exit side of the platform. And we had the waves, the smiles, the high fives. We have a little bit of a connection. We've never said a word, right? So I'm getting off the train. I see him. I make a beeline for him because I want to give him another high five. Instead, he puts his hand out to shake my hand, right? So now he's shaking my hand. He's looking me in the eye. He's got this big smile on his face. He does the cover over, of the handshake, and like gives me this sincere, we've made a connection kind of a handshake.
Hmm.
And this has really stuck with me because I think of so often leaders who say it's hard to connect with my team, right? And in rapid succession, without saying a word, I felt like we had made a connection, right? Now, I may have initiated some of that, or at least I played into that with the waves, the high fives, and things like that. And the guests aren't always going to do that, but leaders can. So if you have a team member that you're looking to connect with, first of all, you have to be flexible on how you're connecting with them, right? But also consistent. So if I had seen him once and I, waved at him once, not much of a connection, right? Think about that from a team member perspective. If you're a leader and you see a new team member, one, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Everything good? All right, fantastic. And you move on. Like you have one of those interactions, it's not going to be that deep of a connection. But the consistency of connecting with them over and over and over again, and to the point where now they're wanting to connect with you, I think there's a lesson there in consistency, in really you making the investment of connecting so that they will then feel comfortable connecting back with you.
Yeah. What you described is this like escalation of personalization of the experience, even though it was all very subtle or subdued. It was kind of muted. It wasn't, off the wall or anything. And, one of the things I talk about a lot is being more enthusiastic than the guest. And that doesn't need to be high energy and bouncing off the walls at all the times. What it is, it's acknowledging, it's not just saying, I'm excited to be here. It's saying, I'm excited that you're here. And the way that you described that, particularly on the third one, the handshake and the hand over it, he was telling you, I'm genuinely glad that you're here. Not just I'm excited to have this little banter right here, but I'm happy that you're here and I'm happy that you're having the experience that you sought out. And even more happy that I'm playing this very small role in it.
Yes.
That had nothing to do with the fact that Candemonium is a fantastic ride, right? And you were riding it over and over again because it's a fantastic ride. What you remembered most was not the airtime on it, but it was, say, Ding?
Dingway.
Dingway. Yeah, you remember specifically the repeated interactions that you had with him because he noticed that you were coming back riding over and over again, and he was saying, in the way that he wanted to communicate, I'm glad you're here and I'm glad that you're having a great time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I wanted to share that one last story about connection because I thought it was really, really powerful. So those are the two big themes, flexibility and connection. I've got a couple of other just kind of random thoughts that I also wanted to share. Some of them came from conversations. One of them is actually something that it came from two different places. One of them is not even an amusement park. It came from Dollywood and Buc-ee's. So we did stop at a Buc-ee's on the way. Now, what are Buc-ee's known for?
The cleanest restrooms.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is that what you were looking for?
It's exactly what I was looking for.
Wow.
What food item is Dollywood known for?
Barbecue? Oh, cinnamon bread.
Cinnamon bread. Absolutely.
I had an amazing BLT 17 years ago there, so that's what's stuck.
That's awesome. That makes me want a BLT now.
Yeah.
No, cinnamon bread. So we were walking around and we noticed at one of the Midway games, they actually have a plush cinnamon bread as a giveaway, right? Yes. And to also see over the years, so I've had a number of cinnamon breads at Dollywood. The way their operation has changed. Like it went from you walk into the grist mill and you there's a line out the door and you give them your money and they give it to you right there and blah blah blah. Now there's a whole queue set up. There's a cashier outside. They give you a ticket. You can buy a drink now with it. You can go in. They have really leaned into the popularity of cinnamon bread. Buc-ee's also leans into the popularity of clean restrooms, right? And so what the sort of mini takeaway from that was, what is unique about you that, again, may not be the thing you're trying to get out there, but is the unique about the experience that people are having that if you lean into that, you're going to create even more fans.
Yeah. And, the cinnamon bread piece of it, they do have control over that, right? Like they create an amazing quality food product that has gained a lot of notoriety and almost is like a pilgrimage to Dollywood to get the cinnamon bread, right?
Yes.
I then also think of, you mentioned the plush cinnamon bread. I think about at Maurice Piers, the plush seagull with a crinkle French fry in its mouth.
Yes.
And now I think about flexibility of accepting the things you can't change. we're on the ocean. There's a lot of seagulls. Their favorite fruit is French fries, right? And they leaned into that and
Right.
actually developed a plush seagull with a French fry in its mouth, right? So it's the thing that you have become known for, maybe unintentionally or inadvertently, and those are similar but different, right? Like that's like a kind of it leans into the quirkiness of the Jersey Shore, and the
Hmm.
fact that it's almost like a negative thing. You're like, you get French fries, watch out, right? Whereas, at Dollywood, it's like, this is our popular food item. We're going to capitalize on this F&B opportunity by creating a retail opportunity from it as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And then the way that they've operationalized it as well, it kind of reminds me of like the butterbeer cart in Hogsmeade, of just like, people want this specific F&B item. We are not going to make them jump through hoops to get it, but we're still going to give them the experience that surrounds it as well, but make sure that we can keep pumping them out and keep
Exactly.
selling them as people keep wanting them, and lean into the fact that they're very popular.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, a little foreshadowing. This is going to foreshadow one of the misses that I have, or the food
Okay.
for thoughts ones here. But I also want to give some special shout outs. I want to give a shout out to the crews at Kings Island, the entire staff, because there wasn't one person from food and beverage to attractions, and that's who we mostly interact with, that did not say, enjoy the rest of your day at Kings Island. Now, they may have said it in their own way, getting off a ride or buying a funnel cake or whatever it might have been, but there was always a post greeting, if you will, a send off of,
A parting pleasantry.
thank you very much, of we hope you enjoy the rest of your day here at Kings Island. And so I want to give them a special shout out, because that was, from a consistency standpoint, that was amazing. I also want to give a shout out to Holiday World for being extremely clean, and they redefined clean for me. I mean, I know that when the Golden Ticket Cleanest Park Award was around, they won that, consecutively. But there was a neatness to the park, right? Like, every piece of mulch was where it should have been. Grass was clipped. Like, I mean, it was like Roller Coaster Tycoon neat. Like computer graphic neat. And I think that not only helps the experience and with the way the park looks, but I also think it inspires people to keep it that way. Whenever you're in a clean area, and you don't want to be the one person that's dumping a Pepsi cup out, on the midway, right? So you're going to put it in the trash can. So I think that actually helps. And in talking to Matt Eckert, I told him that observation. He said, yeah, we have a pretty OCD management team here that that wants to keep things that way. So I think they deserve a big shout out. And one last shout out. This is to a specific person, and her name is Lillian, and she works at Knoebels. She works in food and beverage, and with the people that we saw her interact with, and also with us, she was just so patient and kind and friendly and smiling, and just doing all the things that you would want a frontline team member to do to really take care of a guest. There was somebody in front of us at one of the food stands, and he really didn't know what he wanted, but she was so patient with him in terms of walking him through the menu. And of course, it's that I don't know, the irony of standing behind that person saying, "Come on, let's go," right? But then you want that same hospitality for yourself, right? There's some sort of phenomena there. But we actually ended up seeing a couple of the management teams from Knoebels, and we told them about Lillian, and they went right over, got her manager, recognized her. They actually sent me a screen capture from the security camera of them giving Lillian a high five, the HR director giving Lillian a high five. So it was just great to be part of that recognition, but also to see, a young person at a food stand, which food and beverage is not an easy task, to see her excelling and doing such a great job. So I wanted to make sure I gave those special shout outs.
Nice. Those were
Yeah.
great random thoughts and shout outs. I think is enjoy the rest of your day at Kings Island. Is that Kings Island's my pleasure? Is that Kings Island's phrase that one of us will say in just a little bit here that I can't say it too early. Uh,
No.
the Holiday World cleanliness piece of it, kind of got me thinking that the way that you phrased that, initially you said or Matt said we have an OCD management team, which then leads to kind of the team wanting to make sure that they uphold that pride for being the world's cleanliest park. Uh, but I don't know if you specifically alluded to this, but one of my takeaways is that that also trains the guest as well of
Hmm.
saying, like, or I think he said like the guest doesn't want to be the one who's thrown their Pepsi can in the bushes or their Pepsi cup in the bushes or something like that, of being able to say like it's not just the team to make sure that we're cleaning up after guests. It's up to all of us, the team and the guests, uh, to because it's your park, right? Like for the guests,
Right.
like like we're all here for you. Like help each other, help yourselves out by keeping the park clean. Um, and then yeah, Lillian at F&B and at Knoebels, and just that patience and being able to get the guest to make a decision of what their order might be, like you said, takes a lot of patience, takes a lot of skill. And like you said, a young person working in F&B, which is not always the most glamorous position to be in, and sometimes can be, among the most stressful, of being able to be that front facing and maintaining that composure for that guest that you saw it, and it was not even her interaction with you. It was just
Right.
you observing that and making that recognition of helping that other guest. So excellent.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Speaking of Knoebels, you mentioned it, but I also just wanted to echo your sentiment as well and extend my condolences to the entire Knoebels family and the Knoebels team for the loss of Dick Knoebel, and just
Yeah.
such just an amazing titan of the industry, and of course will his legacy will last for a very long time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Well said. So with that, not related to what you just said, are you ready to get to a few points of food for thought for different
Let's hear
places?
some food for thought. I'm getting hungry for some
Okay.
thoughts.
Or BLT. Um,
Guilty.
so the first one comes from a couple of different parks. I won't mention them, but on the ride platform, the ride operators each had a little walkie-talkie that was separate from the regular park radios and things like that, that they could talk to each other. So the greeter could talk to the operator and they could talk to the loader and that kind of thing, like they were standing next to each other. And I would imagine that that came from a request from the operator saying, "Oh, it would be great if we could talk. There's times when we need to communicate and things like that." Well, in the two cases that we saw that implemented, we could tell that they were having more personal conversations than work-related conversations. So while I'm an advocate for communication, I'm an advocate for, providing the resources that people need, I think that one was a miss. Like the way it's being used, the way it's implemented, maybe even the way it's enforced, I think is a little bit of a miss on that one.
Mm.
I will
All
also
right.
say, as contrast, that the places that had the best guest service and the best operations did not use those walkie-talkies. And I will leave it at that. I also want to talk about, as I said, the cinnamon bread leads me into a miss or a food for thought because it's an example of a park not leaning into something that is very popular, which are night rides on the Beast, right? Very popular, very popular. Now, because of their nighttime firework and drone show, the Beast closes at 9:30, does not reopen until 10:30, right?
Mm.
They are eliminating an hour of darkness where people could be experiencing one of the things that that park is absolutely known for. Now, I also understand from a safety perspective that where they're shooting off the fireworks and the drones that ride would have to close. I totally get it. And I'm sure that they've looked at this. I'm sure they're a very smart team, right? I'm sure that they've taken into consideration that they're closing this ride during that time, but this is the only or best place that they can put those pieces of equipment to run that show, and that there's probably more people that are enjoying the overall show than standing in line, and they probably run those numbers and things like that. But as I was thinking about it from the point of view of Dollywood leaning into the cinnamon bread, because that's what they're known for, versus what I'm seeing at Kings Island, where you have an opportunity. There's even a sign on the operator booth that says famous night rides. on the beast, and they're taking away an hour of that operation. Again, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying this is something I noticed. I'm sure that
From the perspective of the guest.
from the perspective of the guest,
Yeah.
absolutely. So that's one thing that I wanted to throw out there as food for thought. So if there are opportunities in your operation where you could lean into something, but maybe you have to sacrifice, something else, maybe it's just, again, food for thought. I want people to think about that kind of thing. The other last thing that, again, I'm sure people thought about this, but when Cedar Point closed at 7, that would mean that people aren't going to be eating in the park, or people are going to be going back to the hotel earlier than they typically would have. When we got back there, there's a Perkins at the Breakers, and they advertise that they're open from 7 to 7. Okay. Would there have been an opportunity knowing, and again, I don't know if these conversations took place. I imagine they did. But is there an opportunity to keep that restaurant open knowing that they're going to have an influx of people coming into back to the hotel because there's nothing to do at the park? Now, maybe they didn't have the staff. I understand. Totally get it. Maybe they didn't have the food supply, to do a full dinner, a dinner service. Totally understand that. Just again, from a guest perspective, I'm thinking, all right, will we have the full breadth of opportunity to have something to eat when we get back there? So is that potentially food for, no pun intended, food for thought, if you are showing, or if you are making a very legitimate and safety call to close the park, that if there's other opportunities for people to enjoy a meal, or just get fed because you're not doing it at the park, maybe there's that opportunity to extend something if you can. And again, full disclosure, I don't know. I wasn't in those conversations. Maybe there's very good reasons why they couldn't, but just something I wanted to bring up as kind of food for thought.
I think 7 o'clock's pretty early to close for dinner anyway, but that's just my food for thought with that. But
Sure.
again, I don't make those decisions. I also think of Perkins as being a 24-hour restaurant, but maybe that's just from time in Orlando, but or time in college and in my early 20s or so. I would either go there for breakfast or very late at night. But yeah, that's all. I mean, just all really good observations. And like you said, you weren't in the room, you weren't part of those conversations, but these are the thoughts that so many of your guests are having. So I'm sure there's a legitimate reason for all the things that you mentioned. My question is then, what does that communication look like to guests to be able to make sure that there aren't people standing outside at 7:05 being like, why can't we eat right now? Because those guests, they're not going to think the way that you think, and methodically and operationally and logistically, and all the brains that happen within the inner workings of a large destination amusement park resort, or kind of everything like that, alongside with all the other things that you mentioned as well. So the way that it's communicated to guests is just as important as those decisions being made.
Well, and I will say, right outside of Perkins, there's a sign that says open 7 to 7.
Yeah.
And when we walked back there at 7:30, it was dark inside. There was nobody waiting there. Like, I mean, I don't know that it was a communication issue for them. I just think from a capacity standpoint, would there have been an opportunity if you had the staff, if you had the food, if all the things line up, that might have been another option for guests that were now thrown out of the park at 7 o'clock.
Yeah. And technically that wasn't a service failure that you encountered by
No.
the restaurant closing at its advertised closing time. It's just more so flexibility, accepting things you can't control and refocusing your energy towards the things that you'd be able to. Of like, are we able to extend the staff a little bit? Call some people
Absolutely.
in. Yeah. But they also, of course, were concerned with the safety of the staff as well. And getting the staff in
100%.
here as well. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's why I present them as food for thought. No pun intended, again, with Perkins, because there's those considerations, those decisions that leaders are making all the time. Is this the best interest of the most people that we're trying to interact with? Is this, from our team, from our guests? So sometimes are very difficult decisions.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
yeah.
Any preview for CNC 2027?
We pretty much have decided we're going back to Europe.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't say anything more
You've
right
done
now.
it all stateside.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, we have so during this trip, we have pretty much planned out, still need to put some details on things, 27, 28, and maybe even 29.
Ooh,
Yeah.
man,
So,
you guys are planners.
well, my friend Alan is a planner. This is probably the furthest ahead I plan anything in my life because of
Wow.
Alan. So anyway, well, thank you for allowing me to go on this journey, this recap journey of CNC 26. Just to recap, I think the two main themes from this trip are flexibility and connection.
Agreed. I wrote those down along with all your random thoughts and food for thought.
Good.
So thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. I always love hearing your recap of these trips and the lessons that you learned from it and being able to consolidate them down into kind of bite-sized pieces that we can share with the industry. So always appreciative of that. And to everyone out there who is watching and listening, just remember, and here is our parting pleasantry, we are all attraction pros.